This is the same kind of extortion we heard about when Cassie took the stand. She testified that on a flight back from France, Diddy allegedly told her, "If you don't do a freak off, I'm gonna release one of the videos you're in and humiliate you." That wasn't a threat for drama, that was leverage. Power used to control, silence, and embarrass. Now fast forward to the courtroom, because what happened there changed everything. Sean Combs' own daughters didn't confirm his worst allegations with words, they did it with their bodies. Mid-testimony, the twins stood up, covered their mouths, and ran out of the courtroom gagging, while inmates reportedly reacted like it was a win. That moment said more than any witness ever could. Everyone thought this trial was about justice and closure, until that happened. Sources inside the courtroom say the girls didn't just hear allegations, they recognized patterns. Familiar details, familiar language, the same script Cassie had been describing for years. That's when it stopped being theoretical and started feeling personal. Prosecutors played testimony while Diddy sat stone-faced. A male companion described being pressured to finish scenarios Diddy allegedly set up in a warehouse filled with his own clothing and memorabilia. No emotion from Diddy, no reaction, just silence. And that silence spoke loud. Let's talk numbers, because they don't lie. Over 200 bottles of baby oil seized from his homes, nearly 100 civil lawsuits pending, a $20 million settlement paid to Cassie in less than 24 hours. And yet, the jury still labeled it toxic but consensual instead of criminal enterprise. Make that make sense. Here's where it really breaks down. If this was all consensual, why couldn't his daughter sit through the testimony? Why did they leave in visible distress? Why couldn't they?
Same kind of extortion that we heard when Cassie took the stand and testified on that airplane ride back from France. Diddy said, "You don't do a freak off, I'm going to release one of the freak off videos that you are profiled in and humiliate you."
Don't let the haters bring you down. Just keep going. Keep chasing your passions and dreams no matter what. Do not let negative people get between you and your goals.
Even fake loyalty for the cameras. That reaction wasn't rehearsed. It was instinct. And let's be clear, the real sentence wasn't 50 months. The real sentence was the look his daughters gave him when they realized the man who bought them Range Rovers for their 16th birthdays was also the man accused of brutal behavior toward their mother, allegedly kicking her in a hotel hallway, allegedly paying staff to bury the footage, allegedly going after rivals out of jealousy. That's a life sentence inside a family. Day 17 of the trial was chaos. Diddy almost got kicked out of his own courtroom after repeated outbursts. The judge had to step in and warn him directly. This wasn't a calm defendant. This was a man losing control in real time. When Jesse and Delilah Combs walked out of that Manhattan courtroom, the case shifted. It stopped being just about legal charges and became about the collapse of his final shield, his family. Witnesses say they
had day 17 on the Diddy trial as the biggest one yet. Guess what? Bingo, you won, because today was probably the most eventful day as far as things that happened that were said on the stand, and most importantly, things that the judge said, because Diddy almost got kicked out of his own.
Fled, not walked, hands over their mouths, eyes wide, like they'd just seen something they could never unsee. The breaking point came during Daniel Phillips's testimony. He described what prosecutors say were multi-day freak-offs, events allegedly orchestrated by Combs involving pressure, direction, and sometimes recording. The twins had sat through weeks of testimony, but this is where they broke. So ask yourself this. If everything was consensual, why did his own daughters react like that? Why didn't they stay? Why didn't they defend him? Why did they leave like the room was unsafe? The verdict only made things messier. In July 2025, after 8 weeks of testimony, the jury convicted Combs on 2 counts of transporting individuals across state lines, each carrying up to 10 years. But they acquitted him of racketeering and trafficking charges that could have put him away for life. Legal analysts say the jury believed the victims, but struggled to see it as
11.
The court reaches few conclusions. 135 months would be more than necessary. A sentence over 11 years is not reasonable. Even the probation department recommends a sentence less than half of that, but 14 months time served would not be sufficient. A judge says
an organized enterprise. They believed Cassie. They believed the companions. They believed hotel staff were paid to hide footage. But they didn't believe enough people were knowingly involved to call it RICO. But then explain this. Why was there a routine? Why did multiple witnesses describe the same script? Why were supplies stockpiled like inventory? Why was money allegedly exchanged to make evidence disappear? The judge sentenced Diddy to 50 months, the maximum for the charges he was convicted on. He called it significant. But let's be real. It's a fraction of what prosecutors wanted and nowhere near what victims feared he'd escape entirely. Diddy's letter to the judge said, "I lost my way. My downfall was rooted in my selfishness." That doesn't sound like accountability. That sounds rehearsed. That sounds coached. Cassie's statement was the real gut punch. She told the court she fears that if he ever walks free, his first move will be retaliation against those who spoke up. That fear isn't imaginary. She settled for $20 million in one day, not for peace, but for safety. Now the question isn't if he'll try to protect himself again. The question is, who's left to protect the people he hurt? Because the courtroom may have closed, but the fallout is just beginning. Everything was consensual. Everything was adult. That was the defense's final line, and it's why they say Diddy was only convicted on limited charges. His team even claimed the judge acted like a 13th juror, second-guessing what the jury already decided. But here's the truth. The real damage didn't come from the verdict. It came from what happened after. Because the moment those twins walked out of that courtroom, the illusion cracked. Bad Boy wasn't just a label. It was a brand, an empire, a carefully protected myth. Beverage deals, endorsements, sports partnerships, luxury, everything.
Anyway, I'm happy to go. So we think that's just absolutely inconsistent with the jury's verdict. I mean, the jury's verdict was resoundingly clear. There was no trafficking, there was no racketeering, everything was consensual, everything was adult, which is why he was convicted only of the offense. What we feel happened today was that the judge acted as a 13th juror, yes, one that we did not choose, and that he second-guessed the jury's.
And yet, almost overnight, the money stopped moving the way it used to. Employees tied to TriStar Sports and Entertainment suddenly saw paychecks delayed or not arrive at all. Attorneys handling Diddy's growing pile of civil cases reportedly went unpaid. One longtime staffer allegedly quit after the family tried to organize a private dinner before sentencing and were told funds weren't immediately available. They had to submit invoices like regular vendors. Let that sink in. This is a man who once moved millions with a single phone call, now being treated like a financial risk by his own management. That's not a setback. That's collapse. Then there's the Holmby Hills mansion. The same property raided by federal agents in March 2024. The same estate with the recording studio, grotto pool, and history everyone now whispers about. It sat on the market for over a year at $61.5 million before being quietly pulled in December. Nobody wants to buy a house that's become shorthand for scandal. Not when the neighbors include Jennifer Lopez and Kylie Jenner. Not when the address alone sparks uncomfortable conversations. The silence around that mansion is louder than anything said in court. And here's the part nobody wants to talk about. The basement. Federal agents seized what they could see, but former staffers have long whispered about rooms that were never fully.
Feelings that I have about the documentary, man, it was just old news, and they took a couple of with the footage from Puff from the days that's leading up him to get arrested, and the incidents with the people from the courts, you know, the two people from the courts. So it was nothing new. It was
examined. Soundproofed areas, private spaces, places that allegedly didn't make it into the official inventory. Now the property is off the market, which raises a new question. If something was missed the first time, who's making sure it never comes to light now? Because silence at this level is never free. Then came the Netflix documentary, Sean Combs. The Reckoning dropped in December like a cultural grenade. Executive produced by 50 Cent, a man who's been feuding with Diddy for decades. The series used what Netflix called legally obtained footage from the days leading up to Diddy's arrest. One moment shook people the most. Diddy is seen telling his legal team, "We have to find somebody who will work with us." To supporters, it's spin. To critics, it sounded like desperation. The documentary didn't stop at the trial. It went further, revisiting long-standing allegations connected to Tupac Shakur and the notorious Big. Through interviews, archived police statements, and public records, it highlighted claims made by Dwayne Keefe D. Davis, who once alleged that Diddy offered money related to Tupac's murder. Diddy has always denied this, but the timing reignited everything. And look at when this all dropped. Diddy was already behind bars.
That he has, with others, and just because no one else has been charged, which normally in a RICO case you would have others charged. It was a statute that designed to get mob bosses, trying to get at criminal behavior that's like a web of criminal behavior that you can't necessarily prove, like the one thing or the statute of limitations expired on the other thing, but you're just showing this bad guy who's operating what's clearly an enterprise that over and over engages in criminal problems or criminal acts.
His daughters were being targeted online. His sons were scrambling to announce their own documentary on Zeus Network, clearly aimed at controlling the narrative before it slipped further. This isn't just legal fallout anymore. It's cultural judgment. It's reputational collapse. It's the internet deciding guilt regardless of verdicts. The cheering inmates at Fort Dix aren't celebrating justice. They're celebrating power dynamics they understand. The memes flooding the twins' social media aren't random jokes.
U.S. attorney, what you want you want the best attorneys you can have in there, and it really, I know you want to, like we said, appearances matter, but you want to win this case, and you need, like you said, it's harder.
They're messages. Your father's legacy is now your burden. And the unpaid lawyers, the delayed checks, the scrambling sons, that's not bad bookkeeping. That's an empire realizing there's no gold left in the vault. The real reckoning isn't happening in a courtroom. It's happening in deleted comments, unanswered calls, vanished allies, and trailers that feel less like defenses and more like farewells. Christian and Justin Combs' docuseries announcement says everything. Stone-faced reactions, a collect call from prison, a carefully edited reminder of philanthropy, music, and fatherhood. It's not a celebration, it's preservation. Because when even your family is filming your legacy instead of living it, that's when you know the fall is real. But here's the problem. Nobody's buying it anymore. Not when the twins are disabling comments, not when the mansion won't sell, not when the only people still cheering for Combs are locked up with him. That's the thing about legacies. They're not built on what you say you are, they're built on what you do. And right now, what Sean Combs did is sit in a federal prison while the rest of the world keeps moving. Except it doesn't really move on because the tapes are still out there. The ones Netflix didn't show in full. The ones former employees may still have. The ones that might explain why his daughters ran, why the jury hesitated, and why parts of that mansion were never fully examined. If 50 Cent gets his way, those tapes are coming. The real question isn't if, it's what happens when.
Did he? Or didn't he? Well, if he didn't, he's got a lot to explain. Well, apparently what Diddy's done now, which is a very interesting thing, is he's on the offensive of sorts. That's right, Sean Diddy Combs has initiated a $100 million defamation lawsuit.
When they do, because this trial proved one thing loud and clear. The law can only go so far. The court of public opinion plays by a different rule book. That's why people keep circling back to RICO. Just because no one else was charged doesn't mean others weren't involved. RICO was designed to go after powerful figures running webs of behavior that can't always be pinned to one single act. It's about patterns, structure, repetition. And prosecutors clearly believed they were looking at an enterprise even if the jury didn't fully agree. Then there's the warehouse in Los Angeles. This isn't just another location. Sources with alleged direct knowledge describe it as a space filled with racks of Combs' old clothing, including items tied to the notorious Big, arranged almost like a shrine, not storage, a stage. The allegation tied to that warehouse is disturbing. That a shirt belonging
Yeah, this is a real issue. And I think Diddy's lawyers are right when you're talking about somebody who's not, supposed to not be able to be accessed in this way.
And that's super scary. If he in fact woke up with a knife to his throat, I mean, that's friggin'
to Biggie was allegedly used in a degrading way, then thrown aside with words meant to shock. If true, that's not about desire. That's about dominance, about disrespect, about proving control over something sacred to others. So here's the real question. If someone was willing to treat a deceased legend's belongings that way, what does that say about how they treated living people? The lawsuit claims this happened in 2020, long after these events were supposedly over. That means either this was a dark relapse or proof the behavior never stopped. And that changes everything. The pattern doesn't start there. It stretches back to the early 90s when Combs was building bad boy records and his reputation as a kingmaker. The 1994 Quad Studios incident, where Tupac Shakur was shot, was the first public crack in the image. Tupac later said he believed Combs knew more than he admitted. He claimed to have proof, but never released it publicly. Fast forward decades later, and Dwayne Keefe D. Davis, now facing charges related to Tupac's case, tells police in an interview that Combs allegedly offered money to solve a problem. Combs has always denied this, but the timing keeps dragging it back into the spotlight. So now people are asking, was this all part of the same system? A structure where access was currency, careers were leverage, and silence was enforced through fear or payoff? Because when you look at the allegations together, the line between business and something darker starts to blur. Especially when you factor in how former employees describe those parties. Not random gatherings, but carefully controlled environments where one person set the rules, everyone else followed or stayed quiet. The racketeering charges failed because jurors didn't believe staff knowingly participated. But here's the reality. In that world, you didn't need to be told. You just needed to understand your position. Assistants, security, stylists, drivers, they weren't asking questions because asking questions had consequences. And that same system didn't stop at business. It reached his family. You see it now in real time. Sons scrambling to reframe history with a documentary, daughters turning off comments because the backlash is unbearable. This isn't just a family crisis, it's a control structure collapsing. Where's the industry now? Where are the artists he launched? The executives who cashed checks? The collaborators who benefited for years? Silence. Because in this industry, loyalty is survival, and survival means pretending nothing happened. But the internet doesn't forget. The tapes don't vanish. And the people who were hurt aren't staying quiet anymore. Cassie Ventura settled fast, but she still testified. The male companions didn't just speak, they gave details. And the hotel workers who allegedly buried footage for money might end up being the most damaging witnesses of all. They weren't insiders. They were bystanders who saw too much. The real reckoning isn't legal anymore. It's cultural. It's narrative. It's happening in real time as people who were in the room finally tell their stories. When his daughters ran out of that courtroom, it wasn't just shock. It looked like recognition, like something clicked that couldn't be undone. The jury acquitting him on the biggest charges wasn't just a verdict. It was another reminder that systems fail. And now, former employees aren't just filing lawsuits, they're talking. The dam is cracking. That Holmby Hills mansion says it all. 17,000 square feet of access, power, and secrets. A basement that former staffers still whisper about. A property pulled from the market twice because no one wants to inherit that history. Walls hold memory, and no buyer wants to live inside someone else's silence. Federal agents took what they could see. But if something was missed, you can be sure someone's trying to keep it buried. Still, in an era of leaks and loose ends, nothing stays hidden forever. Not the tapes, not the warehouse, not the truth. If Combs didn't do what's alleged, then there's a lot that still needs explaining. Instead, he's gone on the offensive with a massive defamation lawsuit, signaling one thing loud and clear. He's fighting the narrative now. But the most damning part isn't any single allegation. It's how the pieces line up. Quad Studios, Tupac, The Warehouse, The Parties, the daughter's reaction, the silence of the industry, the scrambling sons. That's not coincidence. That's a pattern. You can't build an empire on control and be shocked when people speak once the control slips. You can't claim fatherhood while ignoring harm. You can't manage perception forever. Now he's behind bars, the legal chapter closed, but the cultural one just opened wide. The inmates can cheer, the documentaries can spin. But the outside world is moving on, and it's taking his reputation with it. The mansion may be empty, but the stories inside it aren't going anywhere. And the tapes? The ones Netflix didn't fully show? The ones still whispered about? They're still out there. So we end here. A man who thought he controlled the story now trapped inside it. A family split between belief and disbelief. An industry exposed by its silence. And a public finally asking questions that won't go away. The court gave him 50 months. The court of public opinion? That sentence is still being written. What do you think? Did the jury get it wrong? Will the tapes ever surface? And what did you see on those daughters' faces? Shock or recognition? Drop your thoughts. Stay locked in. This story is not done.